Welcome to Talking with the Experts, talking about all things business by business owners for business owners. Episode 235 with Simon Bedard.
You know, you can start to shape your business in a way that it can run without you even. And so, by the way, exiting doesn't just mean selling your company, right? So it might mean stepping out of the day-to-day and putting people in place and letting it run itself. So how long do you want to keep doing what you're doing? How long do you want to keep owning the business? Because some people actually sell their companies, take their capital off the table so that they can, preserve it for their family, and they keep working in the business and just enjoy not having to be the boss and doing everything. They just get to do the bits of work that they love. So valuation, timing, and the last one is legacy. Now, a lot of people, when you talk to them about legacy, they think it's, I've got my name on the door and it's, Simon Bedard and Associates. And that's a small piece of legacy. But I sort of always think about legacy in terms of, once I've left the room, how will people actually think and talk about me?
Over 200 experts have shared their secrets to a successful business. Join me, Rose Davidson, as I discover how these experts took their businesses to the next level.
Talking with the Experts.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. And my guest today is Simon Bedard from Exit Advisory Group. And we're going to be discussing buying, building, growing and selling a business and maximising a company's value. And Simon is the founder and CEO of Exit Advisory Group. It's a boutique M&A firm that also provides a range of advisory services focused on exit strategies and maximising company value. Welcome, Simon, and thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Rose. Pleasure to be here.
Terrific. Now, the ultimate freedom is to own a company that is valuable, scalable, and saleable. And, we're buying and selling businesses every day. So what drives company value?
Look, at its most basic level, a company is really, I guess how a buyer would value your business if you're selling it. Fundamentally, they're buying your future stream of profits, right? And so ultimately, it's what it's worth to that buyer. Of course, there's lots of different ways that you can build intrinsic value, though, in a business. It's not always just about the number of the profit. It's also about the quality of that profit. So yeah, I'm sure we'll touch on a few of those things.
Yeah, we had a discussion before we came on, and I've interviewed people about exit strategies for businesses, and a lot of people don't have an exit strategy. They just think they're going to be in business forever, and they've got no succession planning or anything like that. But I guess what is valuable to the vendor, which is me, who's trying to sell you a business, may not be that, might not hold that same value for the buyer. So how can they come together and find what the value really is of a business? Yeah,
well, look, if I might, I'll love to answer that question. But can I take a step back, because you mentioned strategies and exit planning, and I think when a lot of people, it's just worth addressing that, because I think a lot of people hear exit strategy and they go, oh, I'm not thinking of exiting my business. I love my business. That's like, to some people, it's almost an offense. They almost feel like, oh my God, I feel like I'm betraying my business by talking about exiting it. And I guess I just want to dispel that myth a little bit, because I get our business exists because fundamentally we all exit our business one day, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
So you can either just leave it all to chance and one day get carried out in a box, or you can think about these things and plan for them a little bit. And it's not to say that you need to sit down here today and go, right, I am going to exit on the 24th of December, 2000 and whatever, and I will exit like this. That's lovely if you could narrow it down to that kind of detail, but most people couldn't. What an exit plan is about is saying, there is actually a lot of things that you need to think about when you eventually do exit a business, whether that's next year or in 10 years' time. And some of those things really do need a little bit of thought well prior, so you can take action, make decisions, so that you're not fundamentally pigeonholed into a little corner and you've had all your options taken away from you. And so I'll give you three things, or at least your listeners, three core things that they really need to be thinking about. The first is of course money and valuations and all that sort of stuff, and we'll touch on how to grow the value of your business. But I'm a big believer that, you know, none of us are really born just to do business, right? We're actually born to live our life, and your business should be a vehicle for delivering you the life you want. And so I'm just a believer that, you know, you should be thinking about what kind of life you want and then shape your business to deliver on that. And so of course money is a part of that, right? And I guess, you know, I've had lots of clients who say to me, oh, right, I want 5 million for my business. And when I say, okay, so that's great, why 5 million? And they say, oh, well, you know, that's just kind of the number I've got there. And for most people, it's kind of the back of the envelope or back of the brain kind of quick calculation. Oh yeah, you know, pay off the house, bit of money in the bank, blah, 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 done, 5 million. I'd just say to people, you can actually be a little bit more scientific than that. You know, you can actually break things down a little bit more and go into a little bit more detail. I had one client who said 5 million to me. I actually suggested that he go through this particular activity and stress test it, because to grow his business from the sort of probably 1 mil valuation that he was up to 5 million would take an enormous amount of time, effort, money, and everything. And so, like, do you really want to be sticking around that long and doing that, you know? And it's not even necessarily the time, sometimes it's the energy to have to grow it to that bit, into that size. And so after doing some exercises outside of that, he came back to me and said, you know what, I actually have reassessed, and I probably only need about 3.5 to be able to live the life I want. And so that was a real sense of freedom for him, because he realized he could achieve that in a shorter period of time. So valuation money is important. It's important, but it's important how you think about it and the approach you take to it. So that's the first one. The second one, which valuation leads into, of course, is timing. So, you know, how long do you want to keep doing what you're doing, right? And now you might be saying, you know, I love what I do, and I want to keep doing it for, you know, an indefinite period. Wonderful. That's fabulous. You found your calling. It gives you energy. It's passion. That's really, really cool. But you also need to think about the fact that, you know, life throws curveballs at us all the time. Unexpected things can happen. And I'll give you another example. One of my clients, we sold a cookie factory a couple of years back now, but I got called in to sell the business because the founder, a lovely lady, Tani, she started the company. She was building it up, great growth, you know, bright future, wonderful. Was getting some headaches, went to the doctor, diagnosed with a brain tumor, and 3 months later, she passed away. Now, you know, horrendous situation. And she left a husband and a beautiful little boy behind. And like, things happen, right? And so,
yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, it's tough. And so having a think about the fact that some of that stuff can happen, you know, you can start to shape your business in a way that it can run without you even. And so, you know, by the way, exiting doesn't just mean selling your company, right? So it might mean stepping out of the day-to-day and putting people in place and letting it run itself. So how long do you want to keep doing what you're doing? How long do you want to keep owning the business? Because some people actually sell their companies, take their capital off the table so that they can, you know, preserve it for their family, and they keep working in the business and just enjoy not having to be the boss and doing everything. They just get to do the bits of work that they love. So valuation, timing, and the last one is legacy. Now, a lot of people, when you talk to them about legacy, they think it's, you know, I've got my name on the door and it's, you know, Simon Bedard and Associates. And that's a small piece of legacy. But I sort of always think about legacy in terms of, once I've left the room, how will people actually think and talk about me? And so to that end, what are the relationships with suppliers, if you have suppliers? What about your customers? What about your employees? You know, when you leave the room, will your employees, how will they think about you? Now, there'll be some people listening to this who'll say, I don't really care about all that sort of stuff. Like, legacy is just not that important to me. I pay my employees, I look after them, I'm kind to them, I have good relationships with suppliers and customers. Once I leave, and it's not a problem. And that's wonderful and that's great. And it's good to be able to feel that way, because there's less kind of hooks and tentacles into you. But for a lot of people, there are certainly at least a handful or some employees or customers or whatever that are really important to them. And so, you don't want to kind of just suddenly wake up one day and sell the company and you've not given some thought and consideration to how you feel about those people and those relationships. So
yeah, I agree. I think a lot of times the people that work for you are second thoughts, not front of mind. So yeah, and really, you wouldn't have a business if you didn't have them in the first place. So
yeah, absolutely right. I mean, in the end, business is actually a human construct, and a human construct is made up of people. So now if you've got a business that runs and you don't need any staff or employees, well, bully for you. That's fabulous. People are your greatest strength and your greatest weakness, in the respect that they're also the hardest and most complex things to manage. But for most of us, we have teams and there's people and there's relationships. So there's the money aspect, the timing aspect, and the legacy aspect. And then, there are other variables around how you get out and deal terms and whatever. But if you think about those three things and give yourself a little bit of time to consider them, certainly put a little bit of a process around it, then you can start to understand, at least at a high level, what you're not willing to live with, what you're not willing to live without, and what are maybe the variables in the middle that you're willing to compromise on.
Yeah, but as that goes back to the question, what's valuable to the vendor is not as valuable to the buyer. So how can we, even that up?
Yeah. So look, there's definitely some fundamental sort of principles or drivers of value in any particular business. And so I think, put aside the buyers for the moment, because every buyer is going to be a little bit different, right? They're all going to have their own view. They're going to have their own structures and assets and how they utilize your business as an asset in their mix. It's going to be different for every single potential acquirer. So I guess as business owners, we need to be thinking about the fundamentals and saying, well, how do I structure and build this in a way that it will be most appealing to most people? And so I'll share a couple of things on that front. And a lot of them are going to be obvious to you business owners out there who are, running your company and thinking about growing and stuff like that. But I always think about things really in a couple of terms. Now, I'll come back to one of my original statements. What are you selling? Well, fundamentally, people are buying your future stream of profit, right? But what they start to assess is, what are the risks that profit won't eventuate? And what are the growth opportunities to push that revenue and profit much, much higher? So if you can mitigate risk and you can demonstrate huge upside and growth potential, lots of beautiful blue sky, well, then you start to become quite attractive to a range of different buyers. And by the way, those buyers might actually be some of your own staff who want to buy into your company, and they've, drinking the Kool-Aid, and they want to be on board, and have some skin in the game. But if we talk about some of those risk factors and growth factors, I mean, I'll share a couple of risks to start with. One of the big ones that we always see is concentration risk. So, how dependent are you on any one particular supplier, customer, or even employee? So, if you've got an employee who knows, 6 of the 11 herbs and spices, and they haven't shared it with everybody else, well, that could be a problem if that employee wins 100 million lotto tomorrow and decides not to come back again. I'll give you an example of suppliers. There was a chap by the name Rick Day who ran it basically as a telco supply company. 75% of his revenue came from selling the goods of one supplier. And so when he went to sell his company, he got really pinged on valuation because the buyers saw that as a significant risk. And so it not only impacted the actual valuation, but the deal terms, and he had an earn-out and payments made over time. And there's all these sort of factors that played into it because that risk was seen to be so significant. On the customer side, look, I always sort of say to my customers, ideally, it's best not to have your largest client more than about 15% of your revenue. If you can get it down to a single digit, sub 10, even better.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, once you get to about 15, or over 15, for me, a little red flag starts to pop up. It's not necessarily a game changer or a massive problem, but it's I start wanting to look further into that. By the time you get to red 25, you've sort of got red lights flashing, and and by the time you get to 50, well, the sirens are blaring and everyone's saying warning, warning. So keeping that concentration down is important. And of course, I think there'll be people listening to this saying, yeah, but my biggest customer is huge and they just want to keep buying. What am I meant to do? Say no? No, do the deal, take the revenue. But what you want to start doing is think about what makes that customer so successful for you. Like, why do they love you so much? And who else out there looks like them? And how do you start diversifying and targeting other customers with the type of things that you do? And just start reducing that dependency in that way, rather than sort of capping your earnings.
It's very important to have a diverse customer base and a diverse supplier base for that very reason. Because, your supplier may go out of business and you've counted on them for months and years, perhaps, and all of a sudden they've gone out of business for whatever reason and you're stuck in a hole.
Yeah, exactly. And so look, and if anybody's got a situation where they've got really solid suppliers and maybe there is a bit of concentration risk, one of the things I find most business owners say to me is, I don't want to take business off those suppliers because we've got such a good relationship and they're really supportive of us, and I don't want to do anything to damage that relationship. Fair enough, right? Like that relationship is also an asset and a strength to your business. What I would say though is that perhaps as you get in some new orders, maybe it's next year or something, you see some potential orders coming down the pipe. Think about taking a smaller order and earmarking it to potentially do a trial with a different supplier. It's not necessarily business that this particular supplier, your original supplier is going to miss or notice a drop in orders or anything like that. But it just gives you a little chance to trial out a couple of people and keep them in the wings, start building a relationship over there, start building up your backups. And that way, if there's some sort of thing happening with the original guys, you've just got options up your sleeve.
It's always important too to have a business plan, because then when you want to have your, formulate your exit strategy for whatever reason, or you need more revenue, so you need to go to the bank to borrow money or whatever. And I find that a lot of businesses don't have a business plan, so that when they want to sell their business, they've got no facts or figures and it takes them forever. I mean, I know you've got your, yearly returns and whatever, but that doesn't show everything. It just shows, what comes in, what goes out, but it doesn't, allow the buyer to see inside your head what you've been thinking and, why you've done certain things. And I think, businesses do themselves a disservice by not having that business plan or marketing plan or financial plan in place.
Yep, absolutely. And I think part of that too, Rose, is that, you go back in the day and business plans were 60-page documents that were fundamentally out of date by the day you finished them, right? Like they're just such mammoth beasts and they were inflexible. And I would just say to people, that's not the way that's certainly not the way I'd be doing business planning these days. I talk a little bit more about sort of having a strategic plan, almost more than a business plan, because everything can be just documented and put online these days. And, fundamentally it's about getting stuff done, right? Rather than just talking about it. So, high level sort of strategic plan around your vision, what I call your vision framework anyway, vision, mission, your BHAG, what are the big, hairy, audacious goals you're chasing? How do we then break that down into perhaps, your big, hairy, audacious goal might be 30 years out. It could be 20 years out. It could be 10 years out. But, really, what are you going to get done in the next 3 to 5 years? Then let's break that down into what are you going to get done in the next 12 months? And then, frankly, break that down into 90-day action plans. And that 90-day action plan is short enough that, excuse me, everyone can see the end of that, right? Everyone can see 3 months out. Everyone can kind of understand what's likely to happen in their business. And you can start to take what are small, manageable steps today that, if repeated and done consistently over time, helps you just get, you basically just achieve those large goals by just doing those little bits. regularly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Little baby steps. That's all it takes. And
how do you need an elephant, right? One bite at a time.
Yes. How do you eat chocolate? I don't know.
Shovel it in.
Yeah, in my case, probably yes. So you've also got a podcast, I understand it. It's called Buy, Build and Sell.
Oh, it's Buy, Grow, Sell. Yeah,
beg your pardon. Yes.
No, that's all right. We started off as Buy, Build, Sell, and we did a little shift very quickly because it's quite frankly we couldn't get access to the IP originally. So it's but then we got all the domains and we made the shift that we wanted to make. But it's so Buy, Grow, Sell. And very much similar to you, it's a podcast by business owners for business owners. It's and we talk a lot about people's transactions and how they sold and what happened, and did they have an earn out and did they get the money or not, and some of the wonderful things about even how did I go and find somebody to buy my company. So it's a lot of fun.
So where's that found out? Where can we find it?
Yeah, you can find it everywhere, but I think all the typical platforms. But if you go to buygrowsell.com.au and you'll be able to find it there. And I'm sure we've got all the various socials and stuff like that. So we can provide some links perhaps for the show notes for this podcast. So yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah. All right. I guess if you've got any books in the pipeline.
Funny you ask that. It's kind of been in the mix for the last probably 4 or 5 years. We've been talking about writing a book. In the end, we launched the podcast first because we just thought, well, as you probably figured, I kind of enjoy talking, so it was easier to talk a book than it was to write one. But yeah, look, watch this space probably in the next couple of years. But we've got some pretty big projects in the mix with Buy, Grow, Sell, and really, we want business owners. Once again, first of all, understand what's important in their life and then understand how to shape that business to really deliver the life they want. And a lot of that comes down to how do we grow. And so I think one of my messages for people is growth for the sake of growth is pointless, right? There is another organism on our planet that does that. It's called cancer. It just grows and grows for the sake of growing, and there's no purpose to it. So work out the purpose of the growth and then work out the most efficient way of doing it. Because, when I talk about growing, yes, you're growing revenue and profits and things like that, but you're also on the other side of this value equation is you're growing what we call your multiple, right? So, what's your business worth? Usually your net profit times a number. Well, how do we come up with that number? Most people would say, oh, isn't that just, what industry you're in? Oh, I'm in manufacturing, so it must be a 4 times my profit. And to that, I would say industry averages are like a jigsaw puzzle. They're a piece of the puzzle. They're not the whole mix. They're not the whole picture. There's a lot of qualitative factors, like some of those risk and growth factors we were talking about earlier, that really determine what your multiple should be. So, if you're in manufacturing, you might sell somewhere between a 3 and a 8 time multiple. So, don't just do the rule of thumb and go, well, I must be a 4. Let's, dig a bit deeper and understand where maybe you are today, but what can you do to drive that multiple up? And by the way, the things that tend to move your multiple up, funny thing is that when you start implementing them, it's funny how often revenue and profit follow it. So you end up getting this kind of double whammy of I've improved profit and I've improved my multiple, and now my business might be worth 3 or 4 times what I actually thought it was or should have been worth.
It's not just valuation. Is my husband and I bought a fish and chip shop up in Queensland a few years ago now, and we worked it for 10 years. And when we just bought it off the paperwork, we were so naive. We didn't take it to an accountant or anything. So when we wanted to sell it ourselves, we took it to the accountant, and he was appalled. He said, "Your business, why did you pay so much for it?" Well, because we did. He said, well, it was only worth half of that. And he's lied about the figures that he's been making. There's no way nothing went together.
Yep.
And so in the end, we just walked away from it because it wasn't valuable to sell at all. We couldn't get anyone even as much as we'd tried because we'd overcapitalized on it. So it was really bad.
Well, it's an interesting one too, and you just mentioned an interesting point about going and speaking to the accountant about your valuation. And look, there's lots of accountants out there who talk about business valuation, and some of them will be great. A lot of them aren't necessarily really business valuers. What I'd say is, if you're speaking to your accountant, or your accountant's telling you what your business is worth, I'd be asking them how many transactions they've been across in the last 5 years. Because if you're not actually out there doing deals, if you're not actually seeing stuff transact in the marketplace, you're probably not one of the better people. I would suggest is there, to do a valuation and have such a strong opinion on this sort of stuff.
That was what he was known for, was valuing businesses. So yeah,
sure.
he was in the right space.
Yeah, and he sounds like perhaps an example of somebody who is doing the right kind of stuff. But it's it's just an interesting one. I think these days there's a lot of people who go, yeah, I can do a valuation. Yeah, like I can do a discounted cash flow, or I can do a capitalization of your earnings, and and I can do these sort of accounting style methodologies. But to be frank, what actually happens is, unless you're in the market and you can understand market comparables, you can understand what's going on out there where deals are actually being done and bring that lens to it, then you're probably only dealing with half the story. And that can it might still work for you, but you might be potentially leaving money on the table, or not being aware of some of the risk factors that are going to play into an actual transaction.
Yeah, it's buyer beware most times, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. You got to make sure you got the right deal team around you. Your accountant is still going to be important, if you do sell your business. But I just think you need that external kind of context and commercials around how a transaction is likely to unfold.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, where can people find you, Simon, if they want to work with you?
Yeah, look, probably I'd say two things. One, reach out to me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is my thing. I don't mind if you reach out and just connect with me directly, but please put a message in the connection request, right? Like, I get a lot of connection requests from a lot of people, and it's kind of just a bit weird. There's no context. If you send me a connection request and say that you heard this interview, this podcast, I will connect with you. So, and very happy to do so. And even if you just, you've got a couple of questions, or just you want to connect for the fun of it, cool. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I agree. I hate connection requests, and there's no rhyme or reason. Then you've got to, ask the question, why? And, they should have said that in the first place. It's called manners, and, being absolutely authentic and polite.
Absolutely. You wouldn't just walk up to somebody in a bar and stand next to them and stare at them and go, hi, would you? Like, it's just a weird kind of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Treat people in the digital world the same way you treat them in the real physical world. It's funny. We're all still kind of humans, and we like to connect and have reasonable relationships. And you may not have a great reason to connect today, but just by being polite, no problem, right? We're human to human here. We're not robots. So
absolutely, absolutely. I'm 100% with you there. Simon.
LinkedIn's cool. Otherwise, exitadvisory.com.au is our website. You can certainly see more information about us there.
Lovely. Any final words of wisdom for our viewers and listeners today?
Yeah, look, don't wait till the day you're over it and tired, or your life's changed, to think about how you're going to exit your business. You are going to exit, whether you like it or not. So, start to have a think about what an ideal exit might look like one day. And if you need some help, or if you just want to have the proverbial coffee chat on Zoom or whatever, reach out to me. I'm happy to answer questions and, give you some feedback.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Simon, for joining me today. I've had a wonderful conversation with you. It's been heaps of fun too. So you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Talking with the experts.